Okay. Hello guys, this is Eric here. I'm doing a segment on why you should play Aqua Force tonight by request of Kaiser over there hiding. Yeah, you hiding behind that column. So let's see the way he does it. Mainly gonna be talking about well, technically there's 6 different versions of Aqua Force, but I'll be talking mostly about the 4 big ones, because 2 of the other ones are kind of incomplete or just plain bad. And the 6 types there are Thavis, Blue Wave, Maelstrom, Ripples, Blue Storm. Technically Maelstrom is Blue Storm, but the Blue Storm I'm talking about is more referring to the Legion build they were trying to go for and support, but it didn't get anywhere really. It was really bad. And Transcore, which literally got all of like 3 cards of support, so it's in there just because it was really good at one point in set 13. That was a good thing. So I'll go from what I think is the least relevant to the most relevant. So you already know what I think about the Legion build. It's there. Moving on. Transcore. Transcore was, like I said, they only got 1 Fire's Collection support, so you have that 3, a Stride, and a 2. The 2 is kind of iffy and inconsistent considering it has to survive, and the current meta has 2 control heavy for that thing to survive. And the payoff really isn't that great. You get your grade 3 is like, this break right, extra 10k, really nice in this meta where you could just G-guard it. But the real reason I would talk about Transcore is that one time there was really good, like I mentioned before, in set 13 where Transcore Tetra was the one really good Aqua Force deck. Because technically Aqua Force also had a period of meta before, during around set 10, where you had Glory Maelstrom. But that meta was more Vermilion, in fact. Not Vermilion. Was it Vermilion? Yeah, it was Vermilion. And the Blood, Ezel. So Maelstrom was there, but it really wasn't as important. Then the next one would probably be Maelstrom. Like I said, it was relevant before. It got more support now, but it really suffers from honestly not being fast enough, because I'll talk about it now. The main grade 3s, they actually have a bunch of grade 3s for this thing. They have the Ritual one, the Ritual Cross-Ride in Glory, Glory Maelstrom, where we get the Glory effects from. And then they reprinted the original one as a Break Ride, and then they have another Cross Ride that's reversed. But mainly most decks use the Break Ride because it has on hit where you can search for another grade 3 if it hits, and it's a 3rd battle more if I remember correctly. And if you Break Ride on it, it gets 10k crit and Tom ability if I remember correctly. So you combine that usually with Glory, try to sometimes cheese out that win, but it's not as effective as it was before G-Guards, but now it has access to another cheese thing. I'd probably classify this as a tempo deck, because it really doesn't do anything early, because a lot of the cards are Maelstrom locked, which means you need to be on the grade 3, which means you don't do anything before that. You could Tidal Assault, but that literally all the variants have access to that. Its one real strength is really the cheese combo. The fact that you could combine the new Stride, Wailing Thavis, with the crit Despina, so you could actually get a basically unblockable attack where they have the G-Guard, but it still reaches pretty high numbers. So you could choose out a win with that. That's honestly the only real reason why you play this over the other builds. And the key cards in this it's really just Despina, Rascal Sweeper, because that's a good 11k beater, and it's a calm switcher, which is really Maelstrom's gimmick. Not a big fan of a gimmick, but that's their gimmick. Because it's too reliant on you having actually good attackers. And meta-wise, I really wouldn't say it's meta, since, like I said before, it's really not that fast, and it still has problems against control, because you really can't do anything against field disruption, because you can't stop them from disrupting field, and you can't refill your hand after they blow your fielded. So yeah, I really would say like, I'm not gonna put any tiers on it, but it's probably not meta. Then there's another really popular one. Well, it was popular in the past. Well, Ripples. Ripples is interesting because it was part of one of the cancerous times of Vanguard, because it's infamous for the Grade 2 stalling game and how World Championship was won by that. Although that game was bad in other ways, so it wasn't just Ripples with that. But the main Grade 3 in this deck it's a Grade 2 deck, so the main Grade 3 really doesn't matter as much, but it's specifically the Rebel Legion 1 Miltilis, because on ride it allows you to null your deck, try to deck thin, and it was also part of the Odysseus combo where you could ride another Miltilis to filter through your deck some more, and then you could do all the Legion endgame combos if you wanted to. And this is definitely an aggro deck, because the point of this deck most of the time is just to sit on the Grade 2 Ripple, oh my, Podromos. Sit on a 10k base and then just throw down a bunch of Grade 2s and try to rush them and not ride your 3. Well, this was possible before Seabreeze. It's still strong right now even if they have Seabreeze, but it doesn't lock them out of doing any of their plays like it did in the past. The main strength of this deck is, like I said, you have really high quality early rush, and if you could get the Odysseus, which was limited afterwards because it made the deck really consistent, because it allowed you to filter and get a bunch of free calls by abusing the turtle. I forget the name of the turtle. Sea Rescue Turtle. And that basically allows you to win against any deck, because there is no counterplay when they can't do their actual game plan for their deck. The main weakness now is Seabreeze exists, so people can actually do things now. They also printed a Grade 1 that allowed you to get a GB1, but that required being a Grade 1, so it wasn't as consistent. But Seabreeze's main reason is not as good anymore, because it allows the way to counterplay your Grade 2 rush. You can still ride 2/2s, but since Odysseus doesn't technically count as riding, it's more of a place, you can still Seabreeze past that. So you do have to hard ride to a 2/2, which is not optimal. The key cards for this are, like I said, the Grade 3, Miltilis, the Grade 2, Podromos, Odysseus, because it allows you to rewrite on your 2, deck filter, and reuse the Sea Rescue Turtle. And the other ones are nice. The crit, because it allows you to filter some more through your deck. Nothing else is super important. And meta-wise, before it was the meta, it was essentially a god tier deck, because it couldn't really be beat, and unless you got into a really cancerous era, but ignoring that. But even now, currently, it's still pretty good, because regardless if they have access to Seabreeze or not, if you get a good early game rush, you could most of the time kill them, or rather, you could disrupt them enough that by the time you get to your Grade 3 and you could stride or whatever, you could usually kills them through the fact that they don't have anything left in their hand or on the field. So I'd still say it's relative. It could be meta. It's not like top tier meta, but it's still a deck that can be played. Then going on to Blue Wave is special because it has access to. I wouldn't say it's the best restander, but it still has a really good restand. The main grade 3 in this deck is most definitely Anger Boil, because it gives you a really good stride ability and a really good GB2. Your GB2 is, if you attack it with it at wave X, you can restand something, give it 10k. And whatever your backup grade 3 is, it really doesn't matter because you really want to be on Anger Boil. You even have a stride that allows you to rewrite Anger Boil. Because realistically, if you don't go on Anger Boil, it's so much harder for you to win. And the deck type, this I would classify still as a aggro deck because it has a weird power curve. Because it's strong early, but once you get a stride, it has a dip until they get to high damage, then it spikes again because it allows because your restand will actually mean something once they're at 4. But when they're at 2 or 3, the deck's in a weird place where you're not really doing anything significant. Its strength is, like I said before, it has access to good rush cards because you can play Tidal Assault, you can also use foibles. So you could get a really good turn 2 rush, and by using the draw trigger, Universal to Aqua Force, Malika, you could make foibles 14k, which is really good even if you're going second, because they'll hit 14. And Tidal Assault is Tidal Assault. Better when you go first, but still really good even if you go second. Next. Let's see. The key cards in this, like I said, foibles, the stride, Tetra Boil. It's, I believe, the only restander currently that's not a -2, but instead it's only a -1, which is quite strong. It doesn't even have any specific discard requirements, it's just a discard 1. And the crit is also important in the deck because combined with the restand, it allows you to recoup a lot of advantage when you go full board or try to go really aggro early on. It allows you to recoup some advantage later on. There's no specific grade 1s there. They printed some grade 1 support, but there's nothing specific that's really good with it. There's really a bunch of tech options for it. Grade 2s, I went through, grade 3s. Yeah. And meta-wise, I'd say this deck is still pretty meta, but it isn't as, I'd say it isn't as good as the deck I'm going to talk about next, which is Thomas, which is in fact my favorite Aqua Force build. The main grade 3 is Thomas. I would say it's Thomas, but actually the reason why I like this deck the most is for the backup 3, which is Skyros. So I'll put it there that technically it's a Thomas deck, but since you have access to so many Thomas strides currently, you don't actually need Thomas to have your cards be good. And this is definitely a tempo deck because it doesn't have the early rush of ripples or blue wave, but it does have a really good mid-game power and finishing power. The strength of this deck, which differentiates it from the other 5, is, like I mentioned before, Skyros. Skyros allows you to actually fight against control decks. Any other deck on this list would struggle or be downright shut down by control decks. This one, it could counterplay their counterplay, because by giving your front row resist, and since you have access to Thomas grade 1 deck that has resist innately, you could stop your field from getting locked down. So they'll be forced to using certain cards that line locks or full field lock, but line lock wouldn't work if you have a line of resist units, and there's really very few full field effects. so usually that wouldn't matter. The other important cards would be the Thavis Grade 3. Well, like I mentioned before, not as important. You'd rather get Skyros hosted. Thavis is okay for that incremental advantage you get from the stride against non-control decks, but against control decks actually against control decks and certain specific matchups, like E-Robos, you want Skyros. Grade 2 wise, Adelaide is really good because it's a free restandard that doesn't need a boost. Tidal Assault because that's universal, and then the rest of grade 2s can actually be basically tech, because after those two there's nothing that you need to play. Grade 1 wise, like I said before, it's really up. The only thing you really want to play is Millennium, which is the grade 1 resist unit, just mostly because it has resist. It also has the effect where it's wave 3 or more, you could Counterblast to give it 5k and draw, but that's not really as important. Trigger wise, you have the Thavis Grid, but that's about it. You also want to use the Draw that's universal, the Supersonic Sailor that's universal, mostly because of lack of other options most of the time for these decks. And for your starter, you actually have a choice between 3. I've seen people use different ones. Some people are fond of the Bubble Edge Draco Kid because it allows you to get early draws before you strike. Other people are fans of Andre because it allows you to give you good pressure turns with certain cards if you combo correctly. And some people like to use Micros for that guaranteed stride after the initial stride and that free extra attacks sometimes. And that's about it. And meta-wise, I actually really like Thavis Skyros in the meta because it does really well against control matchups because you could actually stop them from using their deck and you could still somewhat rush them because you have access to the Storm Dominator Thavis and the Wailing Thavis stride. All your cards will still be active and you'll have the GB2. So the only thing they could realistically do is try to disrupt your field during your turn, but as mentioned before, you have access to Melina. So if you can pull that up, they really can't do anything. And yeah, that's all, folks.
If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave it in the comment section below. If you would like to see Eric do another clan, maybe one of your preference, and figure out whether your clan or build is within the meta, leave it in the comment section below. This is Skyknight along with Krispy Kremes, the Handsome Swan, and Kaiser XS saying good fight, good night.
I thought it was just the driver.